What is up, everybody? It's Animac here for AnimeUproar, and in this video we will be talking about a theory that has been forming in my mind for quite a while now. And after all the clues that we've been getting in the latest chapters of the Boku no Hero manga, I just couldn't resist discussing this important subject. We all know that All For One has the ability to steal the quirks of other people and keep them for himself or give them to others. We also know that All For One and the League of Villains have been conducting cruel experiments on people in order to create the artificial humans known as the nomu. Although we still don't know how exactly this process of creating a nomu works. What we do know is that the nomu are super strong and extremely loyal servants of the League of Villains, and that they can often use more than one quirk at once. But recent chapters in the MHA manga have hinted at something shocking and groundbreaking. All For One may not only be stealing quirks and then implanting these stolen quirks into the nomu. He may actually be able to clone and copy the strongest quirks he can find and implant them into the nomu without actually stealing the quirk. Which means that the original user can still use their quirk at the same time as a nomu is using that very same ability. I will break down all the evidence right now step by step to show you how I came to this conclusion. Just be warned that this video will contain manga spoilers. Some of the biggest clues are in manga chapters that still haven't been covered in the anime. So because of that, please proceed with caution. And of course, if you enjoyed this type of content, you can leave a like to let me know. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and Oklahoma smash that notification bell. Shout out to Oklahoma. In order to really get to the bottom of this mystery, and in order for me to explain why I think that All For One is capable of cloning strong quirks and implanting them into the nomu, while still allowing the original user to keep their quirk, we need to look at our old friend, Muscular. The roid-raging Muscular was a member of the Vanguard Action Squad, and he participated in the attack on the forest training camp. His insanely strong quirk known as muscle augmentation amplifies his already massive muscles even further, which gives him superhuman strength and speed. We've seen that this quirk, which literally wraps the body in thick muscle fibers, is useful both offensively and defensively, because the augmented muscle fibers can make the user's physical attacks much stronger while also effectively absorbing the impact of extremely powerful attacks. But why am I bringing up Muscular and his quirk now, when we know that during the forest training camp arc he was defeated by Deku and then imprisoned by the police? He hasn't appeared in the story for a long time, and we can assume that he is currently still in prison and incapable of making a big impact on the story. So with that said, what's the point of talking about Muscular now? Well, in chapter 185 of the manga, we are introduced to the high-end nomu, an insanely overpowered nomu that also appears to be significantly more intelligent than all the nomu that we have previously seen. This high-end nomu is even capable of speaking in a relatively coherent way. Like the other nomu, high-end is capable of using multiple different quirks which give it super strength, speed, insane regeneration abilities, muscle augmentation, and body transformation abilities, along with the ability to fly. But what was that one thing I said when I was listing off all the quirks and abilities that this nomu has been seen using? Muscle augmentation. That's right, the high-end nomu can use a quirk that looks virtually the same as Muscular's muscle augmentation quirk. Giant muscle fibers emerge from the nomu's skin and cover the body in the same way that Muscular's quirk seems to work. From his battle with Endeavor and Hawks, we know that the high-end nomu is the most powerful nomu that we have seen to date, far stronger than the average nomu. We also know that this nomu was more intelligent than any other nomu we've seen before. It was able to plan and use strategy, and it was even able to speak somewhat coherently. This tells us that the nomu experiments that the League of Villains has been conducting seem to be advancing rapidly. And all of this despite the fact that the mastermind behind the League, All For One, is currently incarcerated and under 24-hour surveillance at Tartarus Prison. This is in itself interesting because it tells us that All For One does not necessarily have to be physically present for these experiments to work. But it also tells us that there is something more going on with these experiments. Since we know that All For One can steal quirks and pass them on to others, and since we've seen some of the nomu using more than one quirk at the same time, most of us just assume that the nomu are created by stealing the quirks of other people and then giving these quirks to the various nomu or artificial humans. But the introduction of this high-end nomu changes all of this. We know that the villain Muscular was taken into custody and imprisoned during the Forest Training Camp arc. And we know that at the time of his arrest, he still had his unique muscle augmentation quirk. We also know that any villain with the type of quirk that Muscular has is definitely going to be watched very closely in prison at all times. So clearly there would have been no way for All For One to somehow get to Muscular and steal his quirk so that he can give it to the high-end nomu. And I'm sure that if All For One had broken into a maximum security prison at some point in the story, such a major event would have been reported in the news and we would have heard about it. The only way that the high-end nomu could have gotten a muscle augmentation quirk that is virtually the same as Muscular's quirk is if the villains figured out a way not only to steal quirks, but to somehow copy or clone these quirks. So basically, instead of stealing a single quirk, which means that you take it away from the original user so that they can't use it anymore, and then you transfer that quirk onto one single person, the villains may have figured out a way to clone a strong quirk, allowing the original user to keep it while also allowing an army of artificial humans or nomu to keep using that same quirk. Something like this could really change the game drastically, especially now that the villains have access to Kai Chisaki, aka Overhaul. Imagine copying his insane Fullmetal Alchemist quirk and giving it to an army of high-end nomu. The possibility of cloning strong quirks would allow the villains to become a critical threat to the very existence of the hero society. But maybe you're thinking, sure, the high-end nomu's quirk was really similar to Muscular's quirk, and even though both of these villains just happen to be affiliated with the same villain group, maybe the similarity between the two quirks is just a coincidence. If that's what you think, then allow me to present additional evidence to really drive this theory home. In previous videos, I talked about the doctor who treated Deku as a child back when Deku was waiting for his quirk to manifest, but nothing was happening. This doctor appears to be the very same doctor who is later seen working with All For One, which of course raises all sorts of questions about why this doctor was treating children and whether he was actually using his position in order to find new quirks for All For One to steal. Now think back to when we see Deku and Bakugo as young children. Remember this kid with wings who used to hang around Bakugo? According to Boku no Hero extra material provided by Horikoshi himself, this boy is actually the grandson of the same doctor who told Deku that he was quirkless. Now think back to the Stain arc and the winged nomu that grabbed Deku during the final battle of that arc. In the past, Horikoshi has stated that there was a reason why the winged nomu grabbed Deku out of all the people there. And through one of his drawings, Horikoshi hinted at a connection between the winged nomu and the kid with wings. The drawing that he made looks just like the boy from Deku's past, and the strong implication is that the winged boy from Deku's childhood, the grandson of the doctor, is somehow directly linked to the winged nomu. At first, I thought that maybe the doctor was so insane and determined to serve All For One that he experimented on his own grandson and turned his grandson into a monstrous nomu. If that were the case, it would definitely be the darkest and saddest twist in Boku no Hero to date. And I personally felt that this kind of twist where a grandfather turns his own innocent grandson into a monster was a bit too dark for MHA. I mean, the story so far has definitely had some dark and gruesome turns, but having an innocent boy turned into a monster by his own grandfather and then brutally murdered by Stain seems like a step too far for me. However, my theory about the villains having the ability to clone strong quirks offers another possibility. Maybe the doctor didn't turn his own grandson into a nomu. Maybe he simply cloned or copied his grandson's quirk and gave it to a random nomu. Just like the high-end nomu seems to have somehow gotten Muscular's quirk, even though we know that Muscular didn't have his quirk stolen. This would mean that the connection between the kid from Bakugo and Deku's childhood and the winged nomu is real, but they are connected because the nomu was given a copy of the boy's quirk, not because the boy actually became the nomu. The ability to clone quirks would also go a long way in explaining why a doctor who works for All For One would be treating children. If the doctor was treating children who already had quirks and allowing All For One to steal the best ones, then obviously the children and their parents would notice that something was wrong. They would notice that their child suddenly no longer had a quirk after seeing this specific doctor. So it would be practically impossible for this doctor to hide his true intentions for long. But if the doctor is able to clone quirks instead of stealing them, then he could copy the strongest quirks that the children had and implant them into the nomu without the children ever realizing that anything had happened because their own quirk would still be intact. And one final clue in the story really stood out to me as well, and that is the curious case of Ujiko. Ujiko is a villain that we still haven't even seen, but this villain was the one who allowed Dabi to escape the scene following the fight between the high-end Nomu and Endeavor and Hawks. And Ujiko did this by using a quirk that creates portals which teleport people from one location to another. The quirk creates a foul-smelling black liquid which turns into a portal, and multiple portals can be created at once in order to teleport multiple people from one location to another. But the mysterious person whom Dabi calls Ujiko is not the only individual we've seen using this quirk. If you think back to the Hideout raid arc, All For One uses this exact same quirk to teleport the Nomu into the hideout and to teleport Bakugo and the villains out of it. If All For One simply stole this quirk from someone, then the fact that he is currently in a maximum security prison being monitored all the time means that he couldn't possibly have been the one who warped Dabi away from Endeavor and Hawks. So the fact that there is another villain called Ujiko who can use this same quirk as All For One did during the Hideout raid arc clearly hints at the fact that All For One and the villains don't only steal quirks but also clone and duplicate them in order to allow multiple users to use them at the same time. Since we haven't seen this person yet, we don't even know whether Ujiko is also a Nomu like High End or whether Ujiko is just a normal person. But when we consider muscle augmentation, the winged Nomu, and Ujiko, it seems clear that strong quirks are being cloned by the villains and given to multiple users at once. And if this is true, then we can expect the jobs of pro heroes to get much harder in the future. The villains, including the Nomu, are going to be using incredibly strong quirks that have been duplicated and given to multiple users. Just imagine a Nomu that can use Overhaul's quirk, Kurogiri's quirk, and Dabi's quirk at the same time. Insanely overpowered. And on top of that, the Nomu are getting more intelligent and strategic, which means that the students and pro heroes are about to face their greatest challenge yet. And personally, I can't wait to see where the plot of Boku no Hero goes next. Please let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with my theory that the villains are somehow cloning and duplicating quirks? And this is why we see that a Nomu can use Muscular's quirk even though Muscular still has his quirk and is currently locked away in a maximum security prison. Or maybe you think that it's all just a coincidence and there is another explanation for all of this. Either way, please let me know down below. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you enjoy this type of content and you want to see more, you can leave a like to let me know. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and Oklahoma smash that notification bell. And if you want to keep up to date on all the latest content and give us input for future videos, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at AnimeUproar. As always, thank you all so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. And until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.